Hello everyone and welcome to what is sure to be one of the coolest episodes we've ever done. Today we're taking care of the Ballistic Bandit for Scott from Kentucky Ballistics. Now I have to admit that I'm one of those folks that didn't realize that Scott had a second channel on which this car was created. If you get a chance, his second channel is called Kentucky Customs. Go ahead and check it out, and while you're there, subscribe. Okay, now that the Butterfingers are over, what do you say we get started on this little beastie? I almost forgot to do my obligatory intro. Welcome! I am Victor Mackey, and you're watching Diecast Dream Customs. Nailed it. Of course, that's the only silliness I'm going to be doing today. I don't have the budget for watermelon time or, well, anything else. I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with this model overall. These wheels are a little small, but that doesn't matter because the suspension's going to be way bigger than it is. Here are a couple of reference photos so that you guys can see where we're headed with this thing. Now, I will say that pulling it apart was pretty easy, so I just threw it in the goo and that's where we're picking up. I wonder why it is that all the paint seems to want to come off of these models except for the reds. I may put it through the goo one more time, but I think I'm just going to send it off to polishing. Yeah, the red's coming off with little to no argument, so I don't think I'm going to worry about a second round at the goo. Just in case there are any detail freaks out there, I do take a little bit of liberty with the engine later, but it's barely noticeable. Just look at that, 2.5 minutes in and we're already ready for primer. Once it's primed, I'll move on to Tinkercad and get a rough done for the suspension and the drivetrain. The red piece here represents the base of the car. I used my new calipers to take some measurements to make sure that the frame was at least close. Does it look like a Klingon battlecruiser to anybody else? Maybe it's just me. Anyway, here it is. What do you think of that, folks? Now, this is definitely not a finished product. What it will do, though, is help me with placement for the wheels and the shocks and the axles and the drive shaft and all the other stuff that goes under the car. I think you can start to see the method in my madness right here. This will most likely be one of the most detailed suspensions I've ever done. Well, I take that back. I'd have to say far and away the most intricately detailed suspension I've ever done was for the Shermanator. That was a nightmare. Anyway, using that base for reference, I went back into Tinkercad and created a much more detailed suspension and drivetrain system. I even included the exhaust. But even this isn't the finished product. I'll let the suspension and drivetrain simmer for a bit, but I want to move on to the snowflake wheels. Now, I need to tell you that originally I was seriously considering tuning up the cartoonishness of the car. The wheels were going to be massive, well, to scale anyway. I decided against that later, but kept the wheel design. I just made it smaller. I will say though, they did print pretty well. Since my printer didn't actually create the axle holes all the way through, it's time to drill. Man, I could really use a new hand drill. This one's about had it. Excellent. The width is just about perfect for a standard Mattel axle. What do you say we get on to attaching that insane monster truck suspension and drivetrain? It took a while to locate, but we actually did find a gold paint that was pretty close. I'm relatively satisfied with how the suspension's looking, so I'm going to paint that up as well. Now, you'll see here that I'm using my tweezers as a tool to align the center of the rim with the center of the wheel well. It's not perfect, so it's got to go. I'm not going to make you suffer through another Tinkercad session, so let's see how it looks once I get it off of the platform. I wasn't very satisfied with how it turned out, so I did some refinements, and this is the last iteration. It may indeed be the last iteration of the suspension and drivetrain, but I had to reprint it again because I'm a clumsy turd. Even after printing it again, I still managed to break off 3 of the shocks. It seems at 1/64 scale, this stuff is pretty fragile. And now we can finally move on to starting to put this thing back together. I have to say, even though I decided to go with smaller wheels, they turned out to be my favorite part of this build. Okay, the axle goes all the way through. Let's get the wheels attached to the axles and get the wheels and axles on the suspension. There is one piece of this build that's kind of been overlooked until now: the interior. I'll get the glass in the car, and then I'll get on to painting the interior. Jeez, oh criminy. It's like every one of my cans is stuck now. There we go. Again, I've only seen photos, but from what I can gather, the instrument cluster surround is gold. And I may or may not have added a gold steering wheel for a little fun. This is my one screw up for the video right here, folks. You see, the interior won't go back in without putting the hood back on. That's okay. I took care of that, and now I'm onto the decals. As I understand it, this is supposed to be a direct 1:1, 1/64 scale representation of a 1978 Firebird. That said, I know that the decal is the exact size that it's supposed to be, but when you look at it, it looks like it's too short. Well, I think you've suffered enough. What do you say we get on to the thanks and the glamour shots?